The day my daughter got married, I thought my heart would burst with pride. But by the end of that same night, the groom called me poor class, right in front of everyone. And as I stood there, holding back tears, I realized something about his so-called rich family that changed everything. I can still smell the white roses that filled the church that morning. Sweet, fresh, like hope. The sun was warm but not harsh, the sky perfectly blue, and my hands were trembling as I tried to fix the little silver pin on my daughter's veil. My Clara. She looked like an angel, glowing, nervous, and trying to hold back tears of her own. When she smiled at me through the mirror, I could barely breathe. I remember whispering, "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen, sweetheart." And she laughed softly, saying, "Mom, stop, you'll make me cry." Before I even walked down the aisle, I didn't have much to give her. Not diamonds, not a trust fund, not a big estate. But I gave her every ounce of love I had. I raised her alone after her father passed, and I worked 2 jobs to see her through college. So that day, I thought everything I had sacrificed was finally worth it. But I should have known. Some people can't help but ruin something pure. The ceremony itself was grand. Too grand, if I'm being honest. The Hartleys, Ethan's family, had spared no expense. There were chandeliers bigger than my old apartment, champagne fountains and flowers imported from Italy, or so they said. Everyone was dressed like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. And me? I was wearing my best pastel blue dress that I'd saved for years, pressed and spotless, though it wasn't designer. When I first arrived at the venue, one of the guests, a woman dripping in jewelry, gave me a quick up and down glance and asked, "You must be the help?" I smiled politely and said, "No, I'm the bride's mother." Her eyes widened, then she mumbled something about unexpected simplicity and walked away. That was my first sting of the day, the first of many. Clara looked so happy standing beside Ethan during the ceremony. I watched her mouth tremble as she said her vows, her voice filled with love and faith. Ethan, handsome and polished, smiled that perfect smile of his. Everyone applauded when they kissed, and I actually teared up. For a moment, I let myself believe I was being welcomed into something beautiful. But by the time we got to the reception hall, I started to feel out of place. Ethan's family was everywhere. Cousins, uncles, aunts, all dressed to impress. They laughed loudly, name-dropped celebrities, talked about vacations in Monaco, and compared luxury watches like they were trading cards. Every time I tried to join a conversation, they'd smile politely but shift their bodies away like I was invisible. Then I heard it. 2 young women, bridesmaids, I think, whispering near the bar. "That's Clara's mom?" "Yeah, poor thing. Look at her dress. Looks like something from a thrift store." Ethan must really love Clara to marry that background. My stomach twisted. I turned away, pretending I hadn't heard, but my ears burned and I wanted to disappear. Later, when it was time for the family speeches, Ethan's father, a tall, silver-haired man, took the mic. He started with all the usual lines about love and family, but then he said something that made my skin crawl. "We're so proud to welcome Clara into our wealthy family," he said, pausing for laughter, "and we'll do our best to upgrade her humble roots." Some people chuckled. I didn't. Clara's smile froze for a second, and she glanced nervously at me. I tried to act fine, clapping politely, but my chest was tight. Then Ethan grabbed the mic, laughing. "Well, I guess every fairy tale needs a Cinderella, right?" Laughter. Real, ugly laughter this time. I felt the blood drain from my face. I stared at him. My daughter's groom, the man who had promised to cherish her. And all I saw was arrogance. He looked right at me when he said it, eyes glinting, and added under his breath, "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll polish her up just fine." A few people near him laughed again. That was when Clara's hand tightened around his arm, her face pale. She whispered something to him, but he just smiled for the crowd like nothing had happened. I wanted to leave right then, but I couldn't ruin my daughter's day. I swallowed hard, forcing a smile that felt like glass in my mouth. I walked outside for a moment to breathe. The cool evening air hit me, and I blinked back tears. I kept telling myself, it's okay. It's her day. Don't make a scene. But deep down, something inside me snapped. How dare they? How dare anyone make my child feel small for where she came from? When I walked back in, people were dancing, laughing, pretending like nothing happened. But as I passed the dessert table, I caught sight of someone that made me pause. A man, tall, dark hair, wearing an expensive-looking tuxedo, was talking to a group near the bar. He looked familiar, painfully familiar. I couldn't place it at first, but then it hit me. I'd seen him months ago at a cafe near my work. He wasn't a businessman, he was a waiter. I remembered his voice clearly. He'd served me coffee once, even joked about how hard it was to find extra shifts. My heart started pounding. I looked again to be sure. Yes, it was him. Same smile, same little scar near his chin. But here he was, laughing with the Hartleys, calling Ethan brother. Something wasn't right. I sat down at the nearest table, pretending to sip my drink while my mind raced. What was a waiter doing posing as one of Ethan's wealthy relatives? Was it a coincidence? Or was something much bigger going on? As I stared at that man, I could feel the anger I'd been holding all night, slowly changing into suspicion. My humiliation began to fade, replaced by something sharper: curiosity. Because in that moment, I realized something. If Ethan and his family thought I was too poor class to notice the cracks in their perfect little act, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The mother wipes her tears, watching the relative laugh with Ethan, the same man she's sure once asked her for a tip. She forces a smile, whispering to herself, "All right then. Let's see who's really pretending tonight." You know how people say, if something feels too good to be true, it probably is? Well, I didn't want to believe that when I first met Ethan's parents. I wanted so badly for my daughter to have the kind of family I never could give her: polished, loving, secure. But even back then, something about the Hartleys always felt too perfect. It was a Sunday afternoon, almost a year before the wedding. Clara had called me, voice full of excitement, saying, "Mom, Ethan's parents want to meet you." "We're having brunch at the Ridgeview Country Club now, let me be clear." I'd never even seen a country club up close before. I didn't belong in places like that. But I wore my best cream dress, polished my shoes, and told myself I'd make a good impression. After all, this was the man my daughter loved. When I arrived, everything looked like a movie: crystal glasses clinking, waiters gliding around in white gloves, and families chatting over mimosas. I spotted Clara and Ethan at a corner table, and beside them sat his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hartley. They stood up the moment I approached. "Mrs. Reed," Mrs. Hartley said, extending both hands with a bright smile. "We've heard so much about you." She looked like she'd been sculpted out of old money: pearls, a soft pastel suit, and the kind of confidence that only comes from never worrying about bills. Her husband, Mr. Hartley, was tall and calm, with that firm handshake that feels rehearsed. "Pleasure's all mine," he said smoothly. "Our Ethan just adores your Clara." Their voices were perfectly polite, their smiles perfectly friendly, too perfect. We sat down to eat, and from the first minute, the Hartleys dominated the conversation. They talked about their summer home in Aspen, their charity foundation, and how Ethan had grown up traveling between London and New York. I smiled and nodded, even though something in their tone made me feel like a tourist in my own daughter's life. When Mrs. Hartley asked about my job, I said honestly, "I work part-time at the public library." She gave me a polite little smile. You know, the kind people give when they're pretending to be impressed but can't quite hide their judgment. "How lovely," she said softly. "Books are important, aren't they?" And then she turned back to Ethan, laughing about a gala they attended last month. I remember feeling small, Like the air around that table wasn't meant for people like me. But Clara looked so happy, I told myself to swallow my pride. Then the odd things started, tiny details that didn't match up. Mr. Hartley mentioned they'd lived in the Hamptons for years, but later said they'd just moved from San Diego. Mrs. Hartley bragged about Ethan's Oxford education, but Ethan himself had told Clara he went to UCLA, little slips, small, but enough to make me tilt my head. At one point, Mrs. Hartley excused herself to take a phone call, and I overheard her saying, "Yes, it's still the same number, Mrs. Henderson." I remember blinking at that. Henderson? Not Hartley? Maybe she was talking about someone else. I didn't think much of it then, but that name stuck in my mind like a burr. A few weeks later, Ethan invited me to dinner at their home, a grand house on the edge of town. At least, that's what I thought. When I arrived, the place looked picture perfect. Marble floors, modern art, all that. But the strangest thing? There were no family photos. Not a single one. No pictures of Ethan as a child, no old portraits, no wedding photos of the Hartleys themselves. The walls were spotless, almost like they'd been decorated overnight. I remember asking, "You have such a beautiful home. Did you just redecorate?" Mrs. Hartley paused for a second too long, then smiled tightly. "Oh, yes. We just moved some things around for privacy." Privacy? Right. Ethan quickly changed the subject, asking about Clara's work. I didn't press further, but that uneasy feeling kept growing in my gut. After dinner, while Ethan and Clara were in the kitchen, Mr. Hartley offered me a glass of wine. He asked polite questions. About Clara's childhood, about how I managed alone after my husband passed. Then he said something strange. "You did well, raising her on your own." "Most people in your position don't manage to keep things so neat." I wasn't sure what he meant. Position? I smiled and said, "We had our rough years, but I did what I could." He nodded slowly, watching me over his glass like he was assessing me. "Ethan's always had a soft spot for grounded girls," he said finally. "They make him feel balanced." That didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a warning. When Clara dropped me home that night, I told her gently, "Sweetheart, they seem very kind, but do you know much about Ethan's parents? Like where they're really from?" She laughed. "Mom, you're overthinking. They've traveled so much. They've lived everywhere. You just get nervous around fancy people." I smiled and said, "Maybe." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't just nerves. It was instinct. Fast forward to the wedding day again. The hall was buzzing, glittering, crowded with people from both families. I still didn't know half the faces on the groom's side, all of them introducing themselves with perfect smiles and vague stories. One man in particular stood out, a tall, bearded gentleman with a gold watch and slick hair. When one of the guests approached him and asked, "And you are—" He froze, just for a moment. Then he stuttered, Hartley. Jonathan Hartley. But earlier, I'd heard Mrs. Hartley call him Daniel. He caught my eyes for a split second after fumbling his name. His expression shifted, like he realized I'd noticed. He quickly laughed it off, saying, "Inside joke." Everyone calls me by my middle name sometimes, but his laugh didn't reach his eyes. I smiled politely, pretending not to notice. But inside, my thoughts were spinning. Because when people are really family, they don't forget each other's names. And when people are really rich, they don't have to keep their stories straight. Something about the Hartleys was off. Too smooth, too polished. Like they'd practiced their lines before showing up. And as I watched them laughing across the room, I thought to myself, one day I'll find out what their act really is. The man who called himself Jonathan Hartley raises a toast with Ethan's father, glancing nervously toward the mother. For the first time, she doesn't just feel insulted by their arrogance, she feels suspicious. And that night, she decides to start quietly paying attention. They say, love makes you blind, But I think for my Clara, it didn't just blind her, it made her deaf too. Deaf to every warning, every instinct, every quiet thing a mother tries to say when she senses danger. Because when Ethan came into her life, it was like watching my daughter fall into a dream that I couldn't wake her from. It started 2 years ago at a local charity gala that Clara helped organize for her company. She was always the kind-hearted one, volunteering at shelters, helping the elderly, staying late after work to fix other people's mistakes. That night, she called me after the event, voice bright as fireworks. "Mom, I met someone." And just like that, I knew. I could hear it in her tone. That giddy, breathless excitement that only happens once or twice in a lifetime. "His name's Ethan," she said. "He's amazing. Confident, charming, well-spoken. You'd love him." I smiled on the phone, though a small part of me felt uneasy even then. Clara had always been drawn to people who made her feel seen, and men like Ethan knew exactly how to play that part. When I finally met him a few weeks later, I understood what she meant. Ethan was handsome in a way that looked expensive, the kind of man who knew which angle caught the light, who wore confidence like a tailored suit. His handshake was firm, his voice smooth, and his eyes too calculating for someone so young. He brought flowers for me, lilies, my favorite, and told stories about his travels, his business ventures, and how much he admired Clara's pure heart. But there was something about the way he looked at her. Not like she was the love of his life, but like she was his project. From the start, he spoiled her. Trips to the mountains, dinners at 5-star restaurants, surprise gifts delivered to her office. And Clara, my sweet girl, started changing. Just a little at first. She started wearing high heels every day, bought new clothes, and talked about keeping up appearances. She even began using phrases that didn't sound like her. Presentation matters. Status attracts success. You are who you surround yourself with. All straight from Ethan's mouth. One night, I gently told her, "Sweetheart, just make sure you still recognize yourself in all this." She laughed softly, brushing my hair affectionately like she used to when she was a child. "Mom, you worry too much. Ethan just wants the best for me. He's teaching me how to be confident." But that confidence started to look more like shame. The more time went on. Shame about where she came from, about how she was raised. I'll never forget one Saturday when she came home to visit. She stood in our small kitchen, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. The chipped tiles, the fading curtains, the old fridge that hummed too loudly. "Mom," she said softly, "you ever think about selling this place? Moving somewhere nicer?" I stared at her, taken aback. "This is our home, Clara. It's not much, but it's ours." She smiled awkwardly. "I know. It's just, Ethan says it's not safe. He thinks you deserve better." But I could hear what she really meant. Ethan thinks it's beneath him. That was the first time I truly started to dislike him. A few months later, things got worse. I was invited to dinner at their apartment, a luxury condo downtown. Everything gleamed, marble counters, soft music, designer furniture. But the whole place felt cold, like a stage set rather than a home. When I complimented the decor, Ethan smirked and said, "I told Clara, no offense, ma'am, but a woman's taste shows how she was raised." Luckily, she's learning. I froze for a second, my fork halfway to my mouth. He'd said it casually, like a joke, but there was nothing funny about it. Clara nudged him playfully. "Ethan, stop teasing." But when I looked at her, I could tell she wasn't comfortable either, just too in love to admit it. After dinner, when Ethan went to take a call, I asked her quietly, "Honey, are you sure about him? He seems controlling." She frowned immediately. "Mom, don't start, please." "I'm just saying. You don't understand him. You've never met people like him, that's all. You're judging him because he's rich." Her words cut deeper than she knew. "Clara," I whispered, "I'm not jealous. I'm scared. There's a difference." But she just shook her head and said, I love him, Mom. And I'm not giving him up because you can't see past your small-town thinking. That night, she left earlier than planned. I sat alone in my kitchen, her words echoing in my head like a slap. Over the next few months, the distance grew. She started calling less, visiting rarely. Every photo she posted showed Ethan, smiling, charming, perfectly posed beside her, while she slowly faded behind his glow. One evening, I showed up at her office unexpectedly, hoping to have lunch together. She looked happy to see me, at least until Ethan arrived. He'd come to pick her up for a business dinner. When he saw me, his smile tightened. "Oh, Mrs. Reed," he said smoothly. "Always nice to see you." "I didn't know Clara had lunch plans with you. She must have forgotten." The way he said "forgotten" made me feel like a burden. Clara looked torn, but before she could speak, Ethan added, "You know, darling, we should probably head out early. You'll want time to change. You wouldn't want to look underdressed at the Verona." He turned to me with that practiced charm. "Don't take it personally, ma'am. I'm just helping her fit in." I forced a smile, though my chest felt hollow. When they walked away, I heard him murmur something to her, low but clear enough. "Don't worry, babe. I'll make you forget where you came from." I froze. Those words burned themselves into my memory, because that wasn't love, that was control. That was someone trying to erase the person my daughter had always been. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how easily she'd slipped through my fingers, how quickly she'd let someone else rewrite her story. And though I didn't know it then, that one sentence, "I'll make you forget where you came from," was the key to everything that came after. It was the first glimpse of Ethan's true nature, the arrogance, the lies, the hunger to be more than he was. And I promised myself, quietly, that if he ever tried to hurt her, I wouldn't stay silent again. That night, the mother sits alone at her kitchen table, replaying Ethan's words in her head. A storm brews outside, wind rattling the windows, and she whispers to herself, "You can take her out of our home, Ethan, but you'll never take me out of hers." You know how some moments are supposed to take your breath away? Well, when Ethan proposed to my daughter, my breath stopped, but not because it was beautiful, because something about it felt wrong, like every smile in that restaurant had been rehearsed. It happened on a Saturday night, almost a year before the wedding. Clara had called me that morning, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, Ethan's taking me somewhere special tonight. He said it's a surprise. Oh my God, do you think he's gonna—" She didn't even finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. Every mother knows that tone, the mix of hope, nerves, and dreams she's been carrying since she was a little girl. I laughed, told her to wear something she loved, and said, "If he does propose, make sure he's looking at you, not the camera." It was a joke, or at least it was supposed to be. Later that night, she called again, crying and laughing at the same time. "He did it, Mom," he proposed. In the middle of the restaurant, everyone clapped. Her voice trembled with joy. "He said he couldn't wait to make me his wife." "Oh, Mom, it was perfect. I wanted to be happy." I really did. So I congratulated her, wiped away a few tears, and told her how proud I was. But then she said something that made me pause. There were even photographers there. Ethan said they were from the restaurant. They take photos for special guests. Isn't that fancy? I remember staring at my phone, silent for a moment before replying softly, "Yeah, honey, that's real fancy." Something about it didn't sit right. A few days later, Clara and Ethan invited me over for dinner to celebrate. She was glowing, showing off her ring, a huge diamond that looked like it cost more than my entire house. I smiled and hugged her, but when I looked at Ethan, he was already watching me, like he wanted to see my reaction. "Do you like it?" he asked. "It's custom." "Only the best for my fiancé," I nodded. "It's beautiful." But deep down, a question whispered in my mind. How could he afford something like that? Ethan had told us he ran a consulting firm, whatever that meant, but I'd never seen an office, a business card, or even a coworker. Still, I didn't say anything that night. Clara was too happy, and I didn't want to be the storm cloud over her sunshine. Weeks later, Clara showed me a video of the proposal. Someone had posted it online. It had thousands of views already, with comments like, "So romantic," and "couple goals." I sat on the couch, watching as Ethan knelt in the middle of a fancy restaurant, surrounded by people clapping, cheering, taking pictures. The lights were dim, the music soft, the whole scene flawless. Almost too flawless. I watched it again and again. And on the third watch, I noticed something. When Ethan dropped to one knee, the diners behind them didn't look surprised. They didn't gasp or whisper. They were already smiling, phones out, ready. And when he said, "Clara, will you make me the happiest man alive?" The clapping came almost instantly, synchronized, like a cue had been given. Not a single person looked genuinely caught off guard, not one. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed that video a dozen times, freezing frames, looking at faces in the crowd. And then I saw him, a man in a dark blue suit sitting near the corner of the restaurant, smiling and clapping just a little too eagerly. Something about him felt familiar. His face, sharp features, trimmed beard, slicked hair, stuck with me. I couldn't place him at the time, but later, at the wedding, when I saw him again, wearing a tuxedo and calling himself Daniel Hartley, Ethan's cousin, my heart almost stopped. But I'll get to that part later. Back then, I brushed off the unease as paranoia. When I brought it up to Clara the next day, she rolled her eyes playfully. "Mom, not everyone's out to get us. It's called a planned proposal. Everyone does those now. It's romantic." I tried to smile. Romantic, sure. But if everyone in that restaurant knew what was coming, did you really have a choice in that moment? She frowned. "Mom, you're making it sound like he forced me." It was perfect. "You always look for the negative side," I sighed. "I'm just saying, love shouldn't need an audience." She kissed my cheek and said gently, "You're old-fashioned. Ethan says you just don't understand how modern love works." And that sentence, "Ethan says you just don't understand," told me everything I needed to know about who was shaping her thoughts. Later, when I looked closer at the proposal video again, I noticed another strange thing. In the background, near the bar, one of the waiters was filming on his phone. Not the restaurant camera crew, but a regular guy pretending to be working there. And when Ethan slid the ring onto Clara's finger, that waiter gave a subtle thumbs up to someone off screen. It looked more like a shoot than a moment of love. A few weeks after that, Clara showed me a magazine article online. "Local power couple's stunning proposal goes viral." There they were, Ethan and Clara, perfectly posed, smiling like models. The article said Ethan was an up-and-coming entrepreneur with a family legacy in finance. When I asked her where they got that information, Clara said, "Oh, Ethan handled all that." He knows the right people, I wanted to tell her. That's the problem. But I didn't. I could see that she was completely wrapped around him now, lost in his world of staged glamour and false applause. A few weeks after that proposal, Ethan started planning the wedding almost immediately. He insisted on a grand affair, said he'd take care of everything, and Clara should just focus on looking perfect. When she mentioned wanting a small family ceremony, he laughed. "Babe, we're not doing backyard picnics. You're marrying into the Hartley family. We do things big." I saw her hesitate, but she smiled anyway, trying to match his energy. And I just stood there, watching my daughter disappear behind his shadow. The same way those fake lights had swallowed her during that proposal. That night, the mother replays the proposal video one last time. Her eyes fix on the man in the blue suit, clapping too perfectly. She doesn't know his name yet, but one day soon she'll see that same face again, wearing a fake smile, a fake name, and pretending to be family. You ever stand in a place so beautiful it almost feels fake? That was my daughter's wedding. Stunning, glittering, and hollow to the core. Everything about that day screamed money. The chandeliers, the imported flowers, the orchestra, even the napkins had gold embroidery. It was the kind of wedding you see in magazines, but not the kind of wedding a young business consultant could afford. And from the moment I stepped into that ballroom, I knew something was off. The venue was this massive estate just outside the city, all marble floors and tall windows. Ethan had called it a modest celebration, but there were hundreds of guests, a live band, and enough champagne to fill a swimming pool. When I arrived, one of the event staff took my invitation, looked me up and down, and forced a polite smile. My dress was simple, soft blue with little lace sleeves, the one I'd worn to my niece's graduation. I thought it looked nice, respectful, but surrounded by women in glittering gowns and diamond necklaces, I suddenly felt like a misplaced page from another story. I spotted Clara across the room, radiant, glowing, and nervous. Her white gown shimmered under the lights, and her hair was pinned with pearls. She looked like a princess, but not quite like my little girl anymore. When she saw me, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She rushed over, hugged me tightly, then whispered, "Mom, please don't be upset, okay?" Ethan's family, they're just really traditional about presentation. They don't mean anything by it. I blinked, already feeling the sting before she even finished. "Sweetheart, I haven't said a word yet." She smiled weakly, then looked over her shoulder where Mrs. Hartley stood, tall, elegant, and watching us like a hawk. Mrs. Hartley walked up with a champagne glass in hand, her tone smooth and sweet like honey over ice. "Ah, Mrs. Cole," she said. "You look charming." "I adore the vintage look," I smiled politely. "Thank you. It's not vintage, just old." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes flicked to Clara. "My dear, why don't you make sure your mother's seated somewhere comfortable?" It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it, as if I needed a special corner away from their real guests. Throughout the ceremony, I tried to ignore the whispers. That must be the bride's mother. Oh, bless her heart, she looks so sweetly simple. Do you think she knows how expensive this venue is? Every word felt like a needle through my skin. I kept my chin up, smiling for Clara, but inside, I was boiling. When the ceremony ended and the reception began, I finally found a quiet corner near the buffet. That's when Mr. Hartley approached me. He was the perfect image of old money. Silver hair, sharp tuxedo, voice like a salesman. He raised his glass and said, "Beautiful event, isn't it?" We spared no expense for our son. I smiled faintly. "Yes, it's quite something." He chuckled. "Of course, we understand not everyone can afford such taste. But don't worry, we'll take care of Clara like our own." That one sentence hit like a slap. I clenched my hands in my lap and said quietly, "You should." Because I raised her with love, not with your kind of money. For a second, his perfect smile slipped, just slightly, before he raised his glass again. Ah, the spirit of the working class. Admirable. Then he walked away, leaving me with a burning face and trembling hands. When I finally found Clara again, she was with Ethan, laughing for the cameras, twirling under the lights. I waited until they were alone and said softly, "Honey, are you okay? You look tense." She smiled automatically. "I'm fine, Mom. Isn't it beautiful? Ethan said this wedding cost nearly $200,000. I stared at her. $200,000? From what money? Her smile faltered. He's been doing really well lately. Doing what? I pressed. She hesitated, just a moment, then said, "You wouldn't understand, Mom. It's big business stuff. He's investing, helping clients. He knows what he's doing, and right there I knew. She didn't know a damn thing about what her husband actually did. Later that evening during dinner, I sat next to one of the bridesmaids, a bubbly young woman with curls and nervous hands. She kept glancing toward the Hartley table, where Ethan's supposed family sat, all too polished, too still, too perfect. At one point, she leaned toward another bridesmaid and whispered, "Did you see how Mrs. Mrs. Henderson. Oh, wait, I mean Mrs. Hartley. Ha! Did you see her face when the cake came out?" She froze the second the name Henderson slipped. The other bridesmaid elbowed her, hard, and forced a laugh. But I didn't laugh, because Henderson wasn't even close to Hartley. I turned to look at Mrs. Hartley, or whatever her name really was, and something twisted in my gut. The rest of the evening felt like watching a movie play out, everyone too aware of their roles, too scripted. The relatives stood in neat clusters, chatting with expensive smiles. The friends toasted Ethan like they'd known him all their lives, but none of them could answer simple questions about his childhood when I asked. And then, halfway through the father-daughter dance, one of the supposed uncles pulled out his phone, and I caught a glimpse of his screen. It wasn't a family group chat. It was a message labeled Agency Schedule Wedding Event number 442. Agency. Wedding event. Like they were clocked-in employees. I didn't say a word that night, not yet, but my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear the music. Something was very, very wrong. As the music swelled and the guests raised their glasses for another toast, the mother locked eyes with Mrs. Hartley. For a brief second, Mrs. Hartley's perfect smile faltered, and she turned away too quickly, whispering something to a man beside her. The mother leaned back, her pulse racing, and thought, "Henderson, who the hell are you people?" You know that moment when the whole world seems to freeze, and every sound, every breath, every laugh in the room suddenly feels like it's aimed right at you. That's exactly how it felt when my daughter's groom decided to turn his wedding toast into my public humiliation. The reception was in full swing. People were tipsy, laughing too loud, lights shimmering like fairy dust. Ethan stood at the head table holding his champagne glass, grinning like a movie star. Everyone's attention was on him, and he loved it. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began, his voice smooth and confident, "especially those who've supported us from the start. Clara, my love, you've made me the happiest man alive." The crowd awed in perfect unison. I sat quietly at my table, smiling softly, proud of my girl, even if something about that perfect crowd made my skin crawl. Then Ethan's tone shifted. His smile stayed, but his words started to sting. "And of course," he continued, glancing in my direction, "we couldn't be here without Clara's wonderful mother." Dozens of heads turned toward me. I gave a small nod, smiling back politely. "She's truly one of a kind," Ethan said, pausing just long enough for the crowd to hang on his next words. "I mean, she's a real reminder of where Clara came from. Humble beginnings, simple roots." A few guests chuckled. My stomach tightened. "You know, every fairy tale has to start in the dirt before the princess finds her castle, right?" Laughter rippled through the room, sharp, cruel, echoing. Even the Hartley family laughed like they'd rehearsed it. I felt the heat rising in my face. My fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the plate. Clara's eyes went wide. She looked at me, then at Ethan. "Ethan, stop," she whispered, but he just smiled wider. "Oh, come on, babe, I'm joking." "Your mom knows I'm kidding, right?" All eyes were on me now, waiting, watching. Would I laugh? Would I cry? Even Mrs. Hartley, or Mrs. Henderson, or whatever her name really was, leaned forward slightly, lips curved in a smirk. "Don't be so sensitive," she murmured to the woman beside her. That did it. For a moment, I felt every ounce of shame he wanted me to feel, every whispered insult from the past, the pitying looks, the judgments, the times people had looked at me like I didn't belong. But then, something inside me shifted. I looked at my daughter. Her eyes were glassy, trembling, and I knew if I broke down, she'd never forgive herself. So instead, I smiled. A small, steady smile that caught Ethan off guard. I stood up slowly, straightened my dress, and picked up my glass. The music quieted. Conversations died down. "You know, Ethan," I said softly, my voice cutting through the silence, "you're right." A murmur swept through the crowd. He blinked, confused for a second. Clara did come from simple roots, I continued. She came from love, from hard work, from a mother who raised her without a penny from anyone in this room. The laughter faded. The fake smiles twitched. And I guess you're a reminder, too, of what happens when people mistake money for class. The crowd went dead quiet. Ethan's smirk froze in place. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. His eyes darted to the cameras, to the guests, to his parents. They looked furious, but restrained, like actors who'd forgotten their next line. Clara stood up, whispering urgently, "Mom, please." I looked at her, softened my voice. "It's all right, sweetheart. I'm fine." Then I turned back to Ethan, still smiling. "You sure you want to play this game, son?" The room shifted. It was like a chill went through the air. People exchanged glances, wondering if they'd just witnessed the start of something they shouldn't have. Ethan forced a laugh, trying to salvage his image. "Wow, strong words from the mother of the bride. You've got quite a sense of humor, Mrs. Cole." I tilted my head. "Oh, I do. You'll see it soon enough." The crowd gave an awkward round of laughter, unsure which side to take. Ethan raised his glass again, his smile tight. "All right, then. To family." The guests echoed. To family. But the joy was gone. You could feel the tension now. Heavy, uncomfortable, electric. After the toast, people started whispering again. But this time, it wasn't about my simple dress. It was about the look I'd given him, and the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Clara came to me, trembling. "Mom, why did you say that?" "You embarrassed him." I turned to her, calm but firm. "Sweetheart, if a man can't respect the woman who raised you, he doesn't deserve your silence." She blinked, stunned, then looked away, tears threatening to fall. "He's just under pressure," she whispered. "Please, just let tonight be peaceful." I nodded slowly. "For you, I'll try." But peace only lasts as long as the truth stays buried. From that moment on, I couldn't unsee the cracks forming around Ethan's perfect act. His fake family whispered urgently at their table. The photographer stopped filming for a bit, probably unsure if the scene had turned too real, and the way Ethan looked at me, it wasn't just annoyance anymore, it was fear. He didn't know what I knew, that I'd already seen one of his family members before, that I'd started connecting the dots he'd tried so hard to hide. As the music picked up again and Ethan tried to laugh it off, the mother quietly stepped outside for air. She stood under the soft wedding lights, staring at the sky, her champagne untouched. Then, from behind her, a voice said quietly, "You shouldn't have embarrassed him like that." She turned and froze. It was Mrs. Hartley. Only this time the woman wasn't smiling, and the way she said those words made it sound like a threat. They say every storm starts with silence, that eerie calm before thunder splits the sky. That's exactly what it felt like after Ethan humiliated me in front of everyone. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just smiled, walked out of that glittering hall and stepped into the night air, calm as still water, but boiling underneath. The garden outside the venue was breathtaking, lanterns swaying, roses glistening under the soft lights. From inside, I could still hear the laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses. It all sounded muffled now, like the echo of a lie I'd finally stopped believing. I took out my phone, my hands trembling, not from pain anymore, but from the steady rise of determination. I scrolled to Nina's name and hit call. Nina was my best friend, has been for 20 years. The kind of friend who'd show up with soup when you're sick or bail you out when you can't stop crying at 2 a.m. She was also the kind of friend who didn't trust anyone, especially not slick, two perfect men like Ethan Hartley. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Please tell me you didn't strangle the groom, Ray," she said without even saying hello. I let out a dry laugh. "Not yet." That's oddly comforting. I took a shaky breath. "You got anything?" Her tone shifted immediately, the playful edge gone. "You might want to sit down for this one." I glanced around. A marble bench under the fairy lights looked like the perfect spot to receive bad news. I sat. I'm already sitting. Okay, Nina said. So, you remember that agency name you asked me to look into? The one from the guy's phone at the wedding rehearsal. Prestige Family Events? Yeah, I said, my pulse quickening. It's not a catering company, Ray. It's an actor placement agency. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? Actors. They hire people for events. Fake guests, fake family, fake everything. Corporate gigs, weddings, influencer shoots, you name it. My breath caught. You're telling me Ethan's family is on their payroll? Yeah. I found their public portfolio. Some of those faces, they've been in ads, stock photos, even background extras in TV shows. I felt my stomach twist. Oh my God. Ray, this isn't just a rich boy act. It's a scam, the kind that makes money off appearances, fake status to impress real people, especially those they can manipulate. I looked back through the glass doors, watching Ethan laugh among his family. They were smiling too perfectly, too synchronized, like a performance they'd rehearsed one too many times. For weeks, I'd been ignoring my gut, brushing off the tiny clues that something wasn't right, the ever-changing backstories, the names that didn't match, the proposal that felt like a scene from a commercial. And now, it all made sense. I rubbed my forehead, whispering, "My poor Clara." Nina's voice softened. "You warned her, Ray. Don't blame yourself, but listen, I think you can stop this. I just need to confirm one more thing." "What?" "The contracts. If I can get access to the booking form for Ethan's event, I can prove he hired them. There's usually a list, client name, booked family package, that kind of thing." I stood up, pacing. "How long?" "I'm working on it now. I've got a friend who used to freelance for that agency. She might still have access to their archives." "Please, Nina," I whispered. "I need this before it's too late." Inside, I could hear Ethan's voice echoing through the speakers, thanking everyone again, soaking in the spotlight. To the crowd, he looked like a successful young man from a wealthy legacy. But to me, he looked like a liar wrapped in designer fabric. Mrs. Hartley passed by the window, her expression breaking for a split second. Not the calm, elegant matriarch act, but cold, calculating irritation. Her lips moved soundlessly as she muttered something to one of the uncles. And that's when I realized they weren't just pretending to be rich. They were protecting something bigger. The minutes crawled by. I stayed outside, pretending to scroll through my phone, pretending to be the polite, quiet mother who didn't belong here. But inside, I was connecting every thread in my head, every glance, every mistake, every false smile. Then my phone buzzed. New message from Nina. I opened it. There was no text, just a single photo attachment. It was a screenshot from a website, a portfolio listing. Prestige Family Events. Package number 11, the Hartley Family Ensemble. Underneath, a series of profile pictures, headshots of Mr. and Mrs. Hartley, the cousins, the bridesmaids, every single one of them, even Mrs. Hartley. Or Elizabeth Henderson, as her professional name read. And right at the bottom, client, Ethan Vale, event type, wedding experience, full family cast. I froze. My heart felt like it stopped for a full second. Then it started pounding so hard I thought everyone in that ballroom could hear it. Ethan Vale. Not Hartley. Even his name was fake. I stared at that screen until my hands started to shake. Everything was a lie. The fancy dinners, the proposal, the family fortune, the wedding. My daughter had married a fraud, a man who'd built his empire on illusion. And now, the truth was sitting right there in my hand. A single photo that could shatter his whole performance. The music inside changed. Soft piano now, signaling the couple's first dance. Through the window, I saw Clara step onto the floor, her smile forced, but still beautiful. Ethan pulled her close, whispering something in her ear that made her laugh. A sound that used to be pure joy, now sounding like a plea to stay happy. I clutched my phone tighter, my eyes wet but burning with purpose. Nina texted again. Nina, you good? M.E. Better than ever. Nina, you're not going to do something crazy, are you? Me, oh, I'm going to do something honest. I looked at the screen one last time. The photo, the fake names, the evidence. Then I slipped my phone back into my clutch, straightened my dress, and walked toward the ballroom doors. Each step heavier, surer, colder. The calm was over. As the mother reached for the ballroom door handle, her phone buzzed one more time. A message from Nina. Ray. One more thing. I just found out Ethan's done this before. The mother froze mid-step. Before she could reply, the doors opened and the crowd's attention turned toward her. Ethan was standing on stage, smiling proudly, calling her name. There she is, the woman of the hour. Come on up, Mom. And for the first time that night, she smiled back, not from fear, but because she finally knew exactly what she was about to do. The moment I stepped back into that ballroom, the air shifted. Maybe it was just me, the way I was carrying myself now. I wasn't the timid, embarrassed mother anymore. I was walking into a stage full of actors, and for the first time, I held the script. The chandeliers gleamed like diamonds. The guests laughed, glasses clinking, music flowing again. But beneath all that sparkle, there was a crack, small, invisible, and spreading. Ethan noticed me first. He flashed that charming grin, the one that used to fool everyone. Ah, there she is, he said into the mic, our beautiful mother of the bride. Come, join us, say a few words. His voice dripped with fake warmth. The crowd applauded politely. I smiled back. Oh, Ethan, I said softly, my heels clicking against the marble floor as I walked toward the stage. Thank you for the invitation. I would love to say a few words. Clara's eyes widened as I approached the microphone. Her lips trembled. She thought I was about to make a scene, but I simply placed my clutch on the table beside me, straightened my posture, and took the mic gently from Ethan's hand. Good evening, everyone, I began, my tone calm, steady. I want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here, especially Ethan's family. A few polite claps followed. Ethan's mother, or Mrs. Hartley, smiled tightly, that flawless poise never faltering. It's rare to meet such polished people, I continued, pacing slowly. You all seem so perfect, so well coordinated, almost like... I paused, letting the silence drag, like a cast. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Whispers started. A few guests exchanged puzzled looks. Ethan chuckled nervously. Mom, I raised a hand. Please, Ethan. Let me finish. I looked directly at Mr. Hartley, that silver-haired gentleman who'd been beaming all evening. Sir, I said sweetly, I'd especially like to thank you for your performance tonight. You play the role of a proud father so well, almost as well as you did in that insurance commercial 3 years ago. What was it called? Your future. Our promise, wasn't it? A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Mr. Hartley's jaw twitched. He forced a chuckle, muttering something about mistaken identity. But the damage was done. I turned to his wife. And Mrs. Hartley, oh, forgive me, Elizabeth Henderson, wasn't it? You were brilliant in that cooking show pilot that never aired. You really do make a convincing matriarch. Elizabeth froze, her polite smile turning into something cold and brittle. Ethan's face drained of color. He tried to step forward, but I shifted slightly, holding the mic tighter. Oh, and the cousins, I said, turning toward the row of young, glamorous family members. You three? I loved you in that wedding magazine spread last year. Same dresses, different bride laughter broke out from a corner of the hall. Uneasy, uncertain laughter. Even the DJ stopped the music. Ethan's voice trembled. Mom, this This is insane. You're ruining... Ruining? I cut him off sharply, my eyes locking on his. Oh no, dear. You did that yourself the day you lied to my daughter about who you are. He flinched, and that was the first real emotion I'd seen on his face all night. Not arrogance, not control. Fear. The guests were whispering loudly now. Someone stood up, murmuring, "Are you serious?" Another whispered, "Wait, she's saying they're actors?" I nodded slightly, raising my phone. "If anyone's curious," I said, projecting my voice clearly, "here's the agency portfolio. Prestige Family Events. Package 11. The Hartley Family Ensemble." I tapped the screen, and the photo lit up bright and clear. Heads turned, cameras rose. Guests began murmuring, some gasping as they saw the matching faces. The family lined up neatly in professional headshots. Ethan's fake father paled visibly, gripping his glass too tight. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. "She's lying!" he suddenly shouted, his voice breaking the tension. "This is nonsense!" He gestured wildly. And that's when it happened. As he waved his hand, his ring, that thick gold band symbolizing decades of marriage, slipped off his finger and clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the silence. I bent down slowly, picked it up, and turned it in my hand. Inside, the engraving was clear. To R.H. with love, Eileen. Not Hartley, not his wife's initials, real ones. The guests gasped again. One of the bridesmaids muttered, "Oh my God." Another covered her mouth. The fake father's face went pale. He reached for the ring, but I closed my hand around it first. "Looks like it slipped," I said softly. "Much like your story." Ethan stepped forward, his voice low, dangerous. "You need to stop this now." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Why? Are you afraid I'll expose what else is fake? Your degree, your business, or maybe your last name, Vale?" The color drained from his face completely. Clara gasped, her voice trembling. "Mom, what are you saying?" I turned to her gently, softening just for a moment. "Sweetheart, you married a man who built his life on lies. He isn't Hartley. His name is Ethan Vale, and he paid these people to pretend to be his family." A stunned silence followed. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered, recording every second. Ethan's mask cracked. For the first time, his perfect composure shattered. The charming smile gone, replaced by raw, cornered panic. You don't know what you're talking about," he hissed. "You're jealous. You always hated me." "Jealous?" I laughed, but it came out cold. "Jealous of what? A man so insecure he has to rent a family to look successful?" That broke the room. Some guests laughed outright. Others whispered in disbelief. Ethan's fake family started shifting nervously, eyes darting toward the exits. I took a step back, holding the mic with calm authority. "This wedding was supposed to be a celebration," I said, "but instead, it's a performance. And I think it's time we end the show." I placed the mic on the table, turned to my daughter, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "Sweetheart, I told you love shouldn't blind you, but maybe now you'll finally see." Clara stood frozen, her face pale, tears forming. Ethan reached out to her, desperate. "Clara, don't listen to her, please." But Clara stepped back, just one step, and in that moment every mask in the room began to fall. As the fake father stumbled backward, the ring still missing from his hand, the mother grabbed her purse, whispering something urgently to Ethan. I couldn't hear it all, but one word reached me clearly: police. Ethan's head snapped toward her in panic, and that's when I knew. This was far bigger than a scam wedding. Something darker was about to surface. The moment I said the word police, the entire ballroom seemed to explode into sound. Gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping. The once elegant, glittering wedding had turned into chaos. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered on the marble like a gunshot. The music cut off completely. Even the chandeliers seemed to flicker, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Ethan stumbled back from the microphone, eyes darting everywhere. The cameras, the guests, the exits. He was a man caught in his own web, and everyone could see it now. This is insane, he shouted, his voice cracking. She's delusional. This woman's obsessed with ruining me. His hands shook as he pointed at me, but the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. A few guests stood up, whispering things like, "She showed proof." And that's the guy from the commercial. I didn't even have to raise my voice. I just pulled my phone from my clutch again, my hand steady despite the adrenaline flooding through me. "You think I'd come here without proof?" I said, my tone calm but cutting. "Let's show them, shall we?" With a few taps, the projector screen behind the stage came alive. The same one they'd used moments ago to display Ethan and Clara's romantic montage. Only now, it wasn't playing soft piano music or smiling engagement photos. It was showing receipts, emails, payment transfers, agency confirmations, even screenshots of Ethan's messages with a talent coordinator named Sharon P. Need a classy couple to pose as parents. Elegant but warm. Must look believable in photos. Got it. Adding a few cousins for atmosphere. Do you want a script for them? The room erupted. He paid them, someone whispered. Oh my God, this is insane. Ethan lunged toward me, grabbing for the phone, but I stepped back. Touch me, I said quietly, and you'll really give them something to talk about. He froze mid-step. Clara was standing near the edge of the stage, her hands trembling. Ethan, tell me she's lying, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd. Please, just tell me she's lying. Ethan turned toward her, his charm kicking in like a reflex. Baby, of course she's lying. She's always hated me. She's jealous because I gave you the life she couldn't. But Clara wasn't convinced this time. Her eyes darted between him, me, and the screen. She could see it. The digital paper trail glowing behind her husband's face. I clicked again and another image popped up. This time it was a photo of the Hartley family together, the same people, in a different wedding. Same dad, same mom, same cousins, just a different bride and groom. Prestige Family Events Package 11, I announced clearly. The wealthy family package, $15,000 per day, includes one backstory, custom photos, and social media prep. Refunds available upon request. Someone in the audience actually laughed out loud, that kind of disbelieving, shocked laugh that breaks through tension. He rented his family, another voice shouted. Ethan was sweating now. He tried to shout over the crowd. That's fake. It's all fake. She made those up. But his voice was lost in the noise. Then, over the shouting, a new voice rang out. A woman's voice. Stop it, Ethan. Stop lying. Everyone turned. It was Mrs. Hartley. Her hands were shaking, her perfect posture finally gone. Her voice quivered as she took a step forward. I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice breaking. I was paid to be here. We all were. The entire ballroom fell dead silent. Even the air seemed still. Ethan's head snapped toward her. What the hell are you doing? He hissed. You'll ruin everything. But she just shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I needed the money. But this is wrong. That was it. The final card collapsed. One by one, the family began fidgeting uncomfortably. The cousin in the blue dress muttered, I didn't sign up for this kind of drama. The fake father sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. She's right, he said finally. We're just actors. Hired by him, Ethan's face turned crimson. You idiots, he barked. You signed NDAS. You can't. Oh, I think those are void when there's a crime involved, I interrupted sharply. Clara stumbled backward, her face pale. Her makeup streaked as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. Ethan, she choked out. Why? Why would you do this? Why lie about something like this? Ethan's voice cracked, desperate now. Because I love you, Clara. You wouldn't have looked at me twice if I'd told you the truth. You said you wanted a man with ambition. I just gave you the version you wanted. His words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, no one spoke, and then Clara whispered the one thing that broke him completely. "You never gave me love, Ethan. You gave me a performance." He tried to reach for her, but she stumbled back again, this time too far. Her heel caught on the hem of her gown, and before anyone could react, she crumpled to the floor. Gasps echoed through the hall. Someone screamed. The crowd surged forward. "Clara!" I cried, rushing to her side. "Sweetheart, stay with me." Her head rested limply against my lap. Her skin had gone cold. "Get water! Call someone!" I shouted. But everything around me blurred. The lights, the voices, the chaos. All I could see was my daughter, her wedding dress pooling around her like a fallen cloud. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, his voice trembling. "Clara, please, I didn't..." But I shoved him away. "Don't touch her," I snapped. "You've done enough." He froze, guilt and fear twisting his face. For a moment, the entire room was silent again, except for the distant sound of someone dialing emergency services and the faint, rhythmic sobs of people who'd just witnessed a fairy tale crumble. As I held Clara's hand, I looked up at Ethan, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. All the anger, the humiliation, the pain, it turned into something colder. Determination. "You think this is over?" I said quietly, almost too calm. "You've only just begun to see what happens when a mother's pushed too far." The paramedics arrived, rushing Clara onto a stretcher. The fake family slipped away one by one, leaving Ethan surrounded by flashing cameras and whispering guests. As they carried my daughter out, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nina. It read only 3 words. "He's done worse." My stomach turned cold. Whatever I thought I knew about Ethan Vale was just the beginning. The ballroom that once glittered like a dream now looked like the ruins of a lie. Flower petals were crushed underfoot, champagne stains shimmered faintly on the marble, and half-empty glasses sat abandoned on tables, like ghosts of laughter that died too soon. It was past midnight. The guests had all gone, leaving behind only whispers and broken decorations. The string quartet had stopped playing hours ago, but I could still hear echoes of that last song, the one Clara and Ethan danced to before the world fell apart. I sat beside Clara's hospital bed, my hands clasped around hers. The rhythmic beep, beep of the monitor was steady now, thank God. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, confusion clouding them before pain took over. "Mom?" she murmured, her voice hoarse. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair back gently. She tried to sit up, but winced. What happened?" I hesitated. There was no gentle way to say it. "You fainted at the wedding," I said softly. "The paramedics brought you here. You're safe now." Her brow furrowed, then her eyes widened as fragments of memory came flooding back. "Ethan," she whispered, "the family, the lies. It wasn't a nightmare, was it?" I swallowed hard. "No, baby. It wasn't." She stared at me for a long, silent moment, and then the tears came, not loud or dramatic, just silent, shaking sobs that broke my heart into pieces. "How could he do this to me?" she whispered. "I loved him. I defended him. I turned on you for him?" I squeezed her hand tighter. "Because you have a good heart, Clara. You wanted to believe in love, but some people, they see that kindness as weakness." The door creaked open. Ethan stepped in. He looked nothing like the confident man who'd stood on that stage a few hours ago. His once perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt untucked, his face pale and hollow. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Clara's voice cracked through the silence. "Get out!" He flinched. "Clara, please, just hear me out." I stood up immediately, my instincts sharp. "You don't belong here." But he ignored me. His gaze locked on Clara. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted to impress you. I thought if you saw me as someone successful, someone who came from something, You'd believe I was good enough." Clara's lip trembled. "You didn't have to be rich, Ethan. You just had to be honest." He took a hesitant step closer. "I was going to tell you, I swear." "After the wedding? You mean after you had access to my trust account?" she interrupted sharply. He froze. The color drained from his face. "You think I don't know?" she whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "You made me sign that power of attorney last week. Said it was for the honeymoon bookings. I checked with my lawyer." Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came out. She let out a bitter laugh. "You weren't marrying me for love." "You were marrying my savings?" I stepped between them then, my patience gone. "You lied about everything," I said, my voice shaking. "Your name, your family, your career. You manipulated my daughter, used her emotions, and tried to steal her future. And now you think a few tears will fix it?" He clenched his fists, jaw tight. "I loved her. You don't understand." "No," I snapped. "You don't understand what love is. Love doesn't wear a mask and carry a contract." He took another step forward, desperation flickering in his eyes. "Clara, please. I can fix this. I'll pay it all back. We can leave, start fresh, away from all this." Clara's voice broke as she shouted, "Start fresh? With what, Ethan? Another fake name? Another rented family?" Her sob echoed against the sterile hospital walls. Ethan just stood there, his expression collapsing. For a long moment, the only sound was the steady beep of the heart monitor, mocking him with its calm rhythm. Then, from outside the door, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and official. I turned toward the sound just as a firm knock echoed. Knock. Knock. Ethan's head whipped toward the door, panic flashing in his eyes. The door opened slowly, and 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. "Evening," one of them said, nodding politely. "We're looking for Ethan Vale." Ethan stiffened, his voice cracking. What for?" The officer held up a folder. "We received a report from a Ms. Nina Alvarez regarding identity fraud, false representation, and possible financial manipulation." My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. Nina had done it. She'd followed through. Ethan's voice rose, frantic now. "This is insane. I didn't commit fraud." "Sir," the second officer interrupted, "we have documented proof linking you to multiple accounts under different aliases, including an ongoing investigation in Chicago involving staged marriages and asset transfers." Clara gasped. I turned toward Ethan slowly. "Chicago?" He avoided my eyes. "Ethan," Clara whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How many women?" He said nothing. That silence was louder than any confession. The officers stepped closer. "Mr. Vale, you'll need to come with us." Ethan shook his head, his voice trembling. "No, please. Clara, tell them I'm not—" "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't you dare say my name." The officers guided him toward the door as he struggled weakly. "Clara, please! I didn't mean to hurt you. You already did," she whispered. And just like that, he was gone, escorted out under the flickering fluorescent lights. The room was quiet again. I turned to Clara, who sat there trembling, eyes distant. "It's over now, baby," I whispered. "You're safe." She nodded faintly, but her tears kept coming. "No, Mom," she said in a broken voice. "It's not over. He took so much from me. Not money, not time. Just trust. I don't know how to believe anyone again." I wrapped my arms around her. "Then we'll start small," I said softly. "Believe in yourself first. The rest will come." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Nina again. The message read, "Check your email." The agency just sent me their client list, and Ethan's been renting families for years. Your daughter wasn't his first bride. She was supposed to be his last big job. I looked over at Clara, still shaking in my arms, and I whispered to myself, "Then this isn't over. Not yet." It's strange how silence feels after a storm, After all the shouting, the chaos, the tears, the quiet almost feels unreal, too clean, too calm. For days, I'd wake up expecting to hear Clara crying in her room or my phone buzzing with another update about Ethan's case, but instead, there was just peace. And somewhere inside that peace, the ache of everything we'd lost. The news of Ethan Vale's arrest spread faster than wildfire. Every gossip site, every local paper, even social media, all buzzing with headlines like, "Fake family groom arrested for identity fraud," "Man hired actors to impress bride," "Caught on wedding day." The photos went viral. Ethan being led out in handcuffs, his once slick hair messy, his fake smile finally gone. Some people called it karma, others called it justice. For me, it was just the end of a nightmare. A week later, Clara came home from the hospital. Her eyes were still tired, her voice fragile, but there was something different in her. A quiet strength. The first morning she woke up in her old bedroom, she looked around and whispered, "It feels like I've been gone for years." I smiled faintly. "You've just been somewhere dark, sweetheart." "But you're home now." She gave me a weak smile, then paused, her gaze drifting to the window. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think I was stupid?" That question broke me a little. "No, Clara," I said, sitting beside her. "You weren't stupid. You were in love. You wanted to believe in someone who said the right things. We all do that once in our lives." She frowned. "But he lied about everything." "That's the thing about lies," I said gently. "They sound sweet until the truth arrives. Love without truth is just a performance, Clara. A pretty act that always ends when the lights go out." She nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. Then she leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, and whispered, "Then I'm done with performances, Mom." From now on, I want real Nina came by that evening with takeout and a grin that was half pride, half relief. She hugged Clara tightly and said, "You scared us, kid. But you're tougher than you think." We sat around the living room, 3 women who'd just been through fire, eating noodles from paper boxes and laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. Nina told us about the aftermath. "The agency's under investigation," she said, sipping her drink. "They're cooperating with the police. And get this, Ethan's facing charges not just here, but in 3 other states. Apparently, he's been pulling similar stunts for years." Clara blinked. "How?" "Different names," Nina said. "Same con. He'd charm women, claim he came from old money, marry them or almost marry them, and then vanish with investments, joint accounts, you name it." I shook my head. "He must have rehearsed those lies for years." Nina nodded. "But he picked the wrong mother to challenge this time." We all laughed, though a part of me knew it wasn't over. Not really. Not until I understood why Ethan had gone to such extremes. Days turned into weeks. Clara started therapy, joined a support group, and even began painting again, something she hadn't done since college. Her laughter came back slowly, carefully, like a bird returning to a broken nest. Sometimes I'd walk past her door and hear soft music playing. Other times she'd sit with me on the porch at sunset, her head resting on my shoulder, both of us quiet. Healing doesn't come fast. It comes like the tide, a little at a time, washing over old wounds until the hurt dulls to something manageable. One morning, about 6 weeks after the wedding, I was sorting through the mail when I found an unmarked envelope. No return address, just my name, written neatly in cursive across the front, Mrs. L. Matthews. For a moment, I thought it might be another reporter, or maybe a leftover bill from the venue. But something about the handwriting felt careful. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, crisp and at the bottom, a signature I recognized instantly. Elizabeth Henderson. My breath caught. "Mrs. Hartley, dear Mrs. Matthews, I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to tell you the truth before I disappear from this mess for good. Yes, Ethan hired us, me, my husband, and the others. We're actors, yes. But we didn't know what we were stepping into. He told us it was a reality-style performance project, not a real wedding. He said the bride knew. By the time we realized it was real, we were too deep, and the money was too good to walk away from. I quit acting years ago, but bills pile up, and Ethan paid more than anyone ever had. He was desperate, obsessed with making that day perfect. I thought it was just vanity, but I was wrong. We weren't the only ones he hired. Someone else funded the setup. Someone who had more to gain than he did. You should look into a man named Richard Vale, Ethan's father. He's been financing his son's scams for years, cleaning up the messes, paying people off, even faking records. Ethan might be in jail now, but the one pulling the strings is still out there. I'm sorry for my part in all of this. You didn't deserve it. Neither did Clara. Sincerely, Elizabeth Henderson, formerly Mrs. Hartley. I read that letter 3 times, my hands trembling each time. Richard Vale, Ethan's real father. So that was the missing piece. That's how Ethan always bounced back. How he could afford to hire fake families, cover up past scams, and still live large. Someone had been protecting him. Someone who'd taught him that lies could buy love, if you spent enough. I looked out the window where Clara was sitting in the garden, sunlight brushing her hair. She looked peaceful, fragile, but healing. And for a moment, I wanted to burn that letter and let it all end right there. But deep down, I knew we weren't finished. Justice wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about the man who built him. That evening, I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into a drawer beside my phone. Then I texted Nina 2 words. Found something. She replied almost instantly, meet tomorrow. We'll finish this. I looked at the letter again, my heart steady, my resolve stronger than ever. The storm might have passed, but the lightning wasn't done striking yet. You know what's strange? After all the lies, all the humiliation, all the nights I cried wondering where I went wrong as a mother, when the day finally came to face him in court, I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I just felt calm, like a storm that had finally spent every drop of rain. The courtroom was quiet that morning, that heavy kind of quiet where even footsteps echo. Ethan sat at the defendant's table in his orange jumpsuit, head down, wrists cuffed. No expensive suit, no polished shoes, no fake family to prop him up. Just him, bare, small. When he looked up and saw us, me and Clara sitting side by side, his eyes flickered. Maybe shame, maybe disbelief that the 2 women he thought were weak were the ones who ended his game. Clara looked different too, stronger. She wasn't the trembling bride from that wedding day anymore. She was standing tall in a plain blue dress, her chin high, her eyes steady. And when the judge called our names for the victim statement, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "You go first, Mom." So I stood. And for a moment, I just looked at him. This man who'd mocked my dress, laughed at my gift, and told my daughter she'd forget where she came from. "Ethan," I began softly, "when I first met you, I thought maybe I was being too hard on you. Maybe I was just a protective mother who didn't want to let go of her little girl. But turns out, my instincts were right." He stared down at his hands, his jaw tight. "You built your life out of lies," I continued. "You dressed them up, made them pretty, and called them love. You thought pretending to be rich would make you better than us, that money could buy respect, or class, or a conscience." I took a breath, steady but strong. "But you were wrong. Being poor never shamed me, Ethan, not once. I've worked hard for every meal, every dress, every breath I've taken. What does shame me is seeing a man so terrified of truth that he built a kingdom out of fake people just to feel important." He flinched slightly, but I didn't stop. "You called me poor class like it was an insult. But you know what? Poor class women like me, we survive. We build. We raise daughters strong enough to walk away from men like you." Clara's eyes glistened beside me. "You told me once I'd always be beneath you," I said quietly. But today I'm standing, and you're the one in chains." The room went still. Even the guards looked up for a second. I stepped closer to the table, just enough so he had to look me in the eye. "I forgive you," I said, my voice steady, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I want you to remember every night in that cell that the woman you mocked for being poor is the same one who tore your entire fake world apart." He finally looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time, I saw fear, not of prison, but of irrelevance, of being forgotten. When I sat back down, Clara took my hand. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "You said everything I wanted to say." After that, the judge read the sentence. 3 years for fraud, 2 for identity falsification, with additional time for restitution. It wasn't forever, but it was enough. Enough to end the show. Outside the courthouse, the sun felt brighter than I remembered. Maybe it was just the weight lifting. Reporters swarmed, asking questions, flashing cameras. But Clara and I just walked past them, fingers intertwined. We didn't owe anyone else our story. We'd already lived it. Over the next few months, Clara started rebuilding her life piece by piece. She took a job teaching art at a local community center. She started smiling again, not the polite, fragile kind, but real smiles. One afternoon, I came home and found her painting by the window, a canvas full of color and chaos and freedom. She looked up and said, "Mom, I'm thinking of donating this one. Call it The Wedding That Never Was." I laughed. That's one way to make peace with the past. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, I don't want to erase it. I just want to turn it into something beautiful," and she did. A few weeks later, I got another letter, this time from the court. They said Ethan had requested to send a personal apology, but I declined. There was nothing left to hear. Some stories don't need a sequel. Instead, I made tea, sat on the porch, and watched the sun go down over the neighborhood, the same quiet street people once called too simple. But to me, it was home. It was real. And after all the fakeness, real was the most beautiful thing in the world. That night, Clara joined me on the porch, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. We watched the stars come out one by one, and she said, "Mom, you know what I realized?" I glanced at her. "What's that, sweetheart?" "You didn't just save me from Ethan," she said softly. "You saved me from becoming him. From thinking I had to pretend to be someone I'm not to deserve love." Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled. "That's all I ever wanted for you, Clara. Just to be you. No gold, no lies, no masks. Just you." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt right. No secrets, no whispers, just truth and peace. And that's when I realized something. People like Ethan, they spend their lives pretending to be rich because deep down, they're bankrupt where it matters most. Money can buy applause, but it can't buy respect. And class? That's not in the clothes you wear or the car you drive. It's in how you treat people who have less than you. So no, being poor never shamed me. But lying rich men always do. If you stayed with me till the end, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know how far this story of justice has traveled.